Welcome back to the Up in the Blue Seats podcast. Folks, things are good. We're coming off of a nearly perfect 10-1-0 month from the New York Rangers. And would you not believe it? But they are top of the standings yet again in every standings. I mean, they're tied on points, but I mean, they're at the top, and they're the first team with 40 wins this season. There's a lot to be happy, hopeful about with this Ranger team, and we're here to discuss it with you today. I'm your host, Andrew Harts. And of course, we're joined by the New York Post beat writer, Miss Mollie Walker, the great Larry Brooks, and of course, former Ranger great Brian Boyle. Folks, we have a full house today, and it's it's very appropriate because after last night's game, like I mentioned, the Rangers are top right now. And I went back to an earlier podcast from this season, and this was at the end of November when the Rangers were 16-4-1. And I believe the title of that podcast was, Are the Rangers the best team in hockey? And because they statistically standing, they were. And Brian, your response was, it's November. Well, now it's March. We're about 3 months later now, and here we are. This team is now 40-17-3 off of a phenomenal month. I know we have the trade deadline coming up, but are they the best team in hockey currently?
They're up there. They're up there.
This is Larry's favorite question.
They're up there. Florida worries me. So I don't know if they're the best in the East, but they have a lot of the right parts that you need for a run. It should be exciting for the fans. I think the biggest thing right now is that there's two ways to look at it. They gave up 40 shots 5 or 6 games in a row or something like that.
5.
But the goalie's been much, much better. And that is your backbone. That's the guy that you need to be playing the way he's supposed to be playing. And remember how it went when he wasn't playing great, and he covers up a lot of warts if the team in front of him isn't playing great. So you got a number of guys contributing, playing well. Again, Panarin all year long. He's been great. I would like to see more from Mika, to be honest with you. And we'll have to with the push here going into the playoffs and in the playoffs. But again, I look at Florida and I look at their depth, their D, and their goalie's been playing pretty good too. That'll be a big challenge. So, like we've talked about, how do you combat that with what you can do at the trade deadline?
Well, Florida comes in on Monday, and perhaps the Rangers will make their moves before then, but I don't think they'll be done by Monday. If I'm talking about in regard to the trade deadline, if they make a move, I think there'll be multiple moves that they make. But I am very curious to see how they play against Florida on Monday night, because Florida plays a playoff style all year. The Rangers are kind of there, they're kind of not, and I agree with you. I mean, 100% on two of your points. The value of Shesterkin. He's at the top of his game, and so they will go in assuming he continues on a run. He's not gonna have a 960 save percentage the rest of the year, but I think he's assuaged all doubts about who the Rangers' number one goalie is. But so they will go into the playoffs believing they have an edge in goal, as they did 2 years ago. Zibanejad's lack of production is concerning at this point. His 200-foot game is fine. He just does so much for them, but he also has to produce. That line has to contribute 5-on-5. And I watch Mika. It looks like he's playing the same. He's getting, he's taking the shot. His shots are a little bit down, but not that dramatically from the last couple of years. It's gone down from 1920, where he was just a shot machine. But every year it's kind of gone down. But he hasn't scored a 5-on-5 goal since before Christmas. It's almost impossible. He's only, I mean, honestly, because I value him. You understand his value, but you don't want to bash the guy. I don't. But he's scored a 5-on-5 goal in only 4 games this year. 4 games. He has 5 total goals, 5-on-5, and he's not scoring on the power play either at this point. He's only got 2 power play goals, I think, in the last 16 games. They need Mika Zibanejad to score, and it's incredible that they're at the top of the league without this. They're having a remarkable season. They went through the first 40 games or so with their goalie being subpar. Their franchise goalie,
Right.
they had to sit him. Now, their presumptive first line center doesn't score, and they have the best record in the league. I don't know.
It is bananas to think about it that way. I didn't realize it's been since then with the 5-on-5 production. That is, and he's a very, very good player. And again, I'm not bashing him either, but yeah, like the reason you get the number you get when you sign the contract is for these, you have to make a difference. And, remains to be seen, but he's also a guy that can go on a tear. We've seen that.
Right.
And at the end of the year, you look at it all together, and the consistency does matter. I would take a strong 5-on-5 center iceman whose wingers can do some things. Now that might go into the trade deadline, but I would take that where he's playing 200 feet. He's responsible. He's doing really well. That can get you far, and in hopes that he's going to get back to what he was when he was dominant. Now I look at, if you remember in the Cup run a decade ago, we had a player like that who was very good 5-on-5, could play in all situations, and had just gone ice cold at the wrong time in the playoffs. And Rick Nash, who had an amazing career and scored a ton of goals, but for whatever reason, it just couldn't go in for him. And every other aspect of his game was on point. So if you're talking about Cup aspirations and the best in the league, all right, so we're not talking about just whatever. We're talking about where they want to go.
That's what
he's got to put the puck in the net.
And that year, Rick Nash, he has the lowest shooting percentage in Stanley Cup history for a player with 70 shots or more in a tournament. He scored 3 goals on 82 shots. Impossible.
And some of them, remember some of them, like off 2 guys' sticks, and it was just.
Oh yeah, the open net, where Winoff got a stick on it. But no, you're right. He played to the top of his game everywhere except he couldn't score.
Yeah.
And the Rangers always needed Rick Nash to score. He was an interesting case study to us because he didn't score as a Ranger the way he did in Columbus. And so, but he was the Rangers' best player, by far. He was just their best player, other than the goalie.
Yeah, the goalie had something to do with it too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that helped. Well, I definitely want to get your take on that, Mollie, as well too. But that actually is a great transition because you speak of Rick Nash, and the Rangers just finished their 3rd time playing the Columbus Blue Jackets last night. They kind of exercised some of those demons from the previous 2 matchups with them. And I'm just curious, Mollie, because you're there last night. Do you get a sense that this team needed that victory last night to kind of just be? I mean, I know Columbus is not a great team. But like when a team obviously has your number and they're not a great team, do you feel like the team just needed to get that win, especially when you face teams in the playoffs 3, 4, 5 times, and you need to be able to shake those kind of losses off and just get that win to move on? Did you get that sense from them?
When you phrase it that way in terms of executing adjustments against the same team, I definitely think, excuse me, that they know that that's a skill that they're going to need to hone in the playoffs, seeing the same team as many times as they do. But I would not go as far to say that they felt like they needed it. I think that this month's body of work has spoken for itself. And this was a month that was born from a horrid month. And I think that more should be made of the turnaround that we've seen, the way that they came out of the break. I think that we learned a little something about this team and the direction that they're going, what's going on in the locker room, the way that they're going to have in-game resolve, in-season resolve, in-series resolve. I think that this was a really important and revealing moment in the season for this Rangers team. I mean, to come out of that January where a lot of things weren't going right for them, injuries, Igor not playing well, just the whole month as a whole was pretty concerning. To use the break as the reset that they said they were going to go on a 10-game heater the way that they did. And I know it was an easier month in terms of opponents, and I think March is going to be a little bit more telling in terms of the teams that they're stacking up against. But you win 10 games in a row, it doesn't matter who you're playing. I think that said a lot about the group in the locker room, and I definitely think that it's, something that they're going to gain confidence from, and something that's going to serve them well down the line here.
What's that like, Brian, when a team kind of just has your number like that? Even if like they're not a great team, like what goes on in the locker room there in that sense where it's like these friggin' guys, like they can't beat anybody else, but they beaten us. Like what goes on?
They can't beat anybody else.
Well, I mean, I played Columbus in Columbus when they weren't a very good team and just had a terrible time. It's more your own process. If they caught you on a night where you weren't totally prepared and they beat you, then it enters your head that, the next time you're in there, this is going to be a problem again tonight. What are we going to do here? That happens. But going back to what Mollie said, I think in my mind, it eases a lot of any kind of concern after January, because what I thought it was, it was uninspired. There was a lack of emotion. Sometimes that happens through the dog days. And it's a lot easier to happen when you've built up enough equity where your points percentage and you're up higher in the league. And fortunately for them, they lost a lot. They lost a lot in January, but so did
everybody
teams
else
in there.
Yeah.
Especially the Flyers.
Right.
Yeah.
Flyers were right on their heels and playing the same night that they were, and losing too.
Yeah. So it was they refreshed, they reset. Sometimes that's what it is. It's hard, man. It's a long year. And they all might have been in it together. There was a lot to do about the new coach. There was, everything was fairly easy. But again, the importance of who's in the net, one player turning his game around can change a lot of things. And then you get excitement after trade deadline. They're probably not going to lose guys from their current roster. So when you're on a team like that, you're excited. Who are we going to add? What are we going to do? And then all those other games just matter more. More people start coming out and crowd gets a little bit louder. The weather gets a little warmer. So the concerns I had, I was hoping it was just kind of a dog days type situation. And it looks as though that's what it was.
You also, you talk about getting some juice just from the trade deadline and whatnot. I feel like they got some excitement from Matt Rempe and Adam
Big
Edstrom.
time.
I think that I actually kind of suggested this to a player yesterday in the locker room. Like, is it kind of nice to have the spotlight off the team as a whole, and just have it on some kid that's having a great time and really just enjoying himself and having fun? And player totally agreed. Just the moving of the spotlight and on someone who totally deserves it and is enjoying every second of it, is clearly having a good time as he's going along with it, is probably a nice little break for them. Not a lot of people talking about all the odd man rushes that they're given. Everybody's there to talk about Matt Rempe. And my God, do the MSG fans and New York Ranger fans love him. They showed him on the Jumbotron stretching and just a round of applause. The kid couldn't help himself. He looked up, he's smiling. He tried to be cool. He really tried. And he just, but how could you? How could you not smile at that? I mean, his first shift of the night, they came out there, they're banging bodies. One shift, the whole arena is applauding. It's really unlike anything I've ever seen. It's so fun. It's great for the game, great for the Rangers, great for Matt Rempe. Just happy for all involved, honestly.
Well, kids at home, you want to be in the NHL?
Yeah.
Here's a guy that's going to do anything to stay.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not root for that?
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously unique. He is an element, but man, anything to stay. I'm going to be here, and not just stay. Like, I'm going to be a story. I'm going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I would, I don't want to play against that guy because he's going to do anything to stay. He's not scared. If he is, he's the bravest guy. Just because he's big doesn't mean it's not scary getting in there. I remember Glenn Sather would sit me down. He's just like, these people will love you. You'll play in the league for 10 years if this is what you want to do and you're willing to do it. And I went in and I had a little more defense. I didn't throw as many punches, but I still lost fights. And I was like, I'll try to do it. This guy is looking back, I'm like jealous. I wish I was more. I'll take a couple more broken noses. I don't care. This is awesome.
It really is.
And he'll learn from that and he'll be, man.
I mean, they're lining up.
Too. Yeah, I think the excitement too is what could he be?
I kind of wanted to ask you about this, but the concept of these heavyweights lining up for a chance to scrap with this guy. I mean, is that anything that you've seen before? Is it really that, kind of an anomaly? Or, I mean, or is this something that, is a natural progression of what happens, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, I think it's awesome, but it's really, I mean, they're coming up to him at the red line and initiating and planning it ahead. They just want a chance. Is it them riding his celebrity, his wave of, of attention, or is it just what is it?
It's to the point. It's a couple different things. First of all, he's asking these guys. It seems like, from what I've read and heard.
Well, I think only one time. I mean, a Columbus reporter reported that he challenged Olivier, but if you look back at the, rolling back the tape of the red line meeting, Olivier is coming up to him.
Okay.
He's just stretched. Well, he's just, I don't know what was said, but coming and starting the conversation, no matter how it goes, is still kind of initiating, So
here it is too, though, and I don't want to get inside other guys' heads, but if I'm, there's not many left, but if I'm a heavyweight in the league, and this is a throwback, right? This hasn't happened in a while, but these guys, when they were coming up, it was
a thing
prevalent. And then all of a sudden there's no more of it. And they're kind of like, oh, what do we, so when they have the fights, everybody loves it. If you're going to go,
we're back.
Yeah. And if you're going to go into the Garden and this guy's fought every other game, and on my team, I'm going to be the guy that doesn't fight him. I'm going to be the time he doesn't fight. Like, he's fighting Revo if Revo plays.
I was just about to say, that was my next question.
Well, Revo's going to ask, 100%.
Are we taking bets that Ryan Reeves is meeting Matt Rempe at the red line?
He's got to ask him. He's going to ask him, and I don't know what lab he's going to say. I don't know what's going to go on, and we'll see what happens. But Ryan Reeves has been looking for a dance partner for a couple of years. He's obviously, he's very, very tough. He's strong. He doesn't want to give it up. These guys, they think they're the toughest guy in the world, and they should. That's what they are. But you can't let the rookie come in and then not fight him. He's fought everyone else so far. He didn't fight last night because he already fought the guy. Yeah, he wanted to. He's being held back, like after the Troach hit. Like, this guy, he's in the heads, and not like he's in the heads. Oh my goodness, I'm scared of him. Maybe but he's like, well, he's not going to be better than me at my job tonight. So that's kind of where it's at, I think, right now. And Larry, you can kind of, what you've seen, and you've seen.
Well, the anticipation of him matching up with Ryan Reeves on Saturday just reminds me of there was only one other incident or one other scenario where I've covered where there was just a sense of anticipation every night that someone would fight. And that was Troy Crowder when I was actually doing, I was working for the Devils, and I was doing Devils radio then. And Troy Crowder, was the number one guy. Either he or Probert was the number one guy. And he went on this tear. He had beaten Probert in at the Meadowlands on opening night. No name, Troy Crowder. And he cut a swath through the league. Troy Crowder did. The nicest guy. His knuckles were swollen all the time. And the Devils went from place to place. They played a game in Vancouver where he knocked out Craig Cox with one punch. It was frightening because he was, he was dangerous when he fought. And the Rangers went, the Devils went back to Detroit, and the entire, every newspaper, tale of the tape.
Uh,
That was the game, Crowder against Probert. And they didn't get on the ice at the same time in the first period. The second period, they fought. Probert beat him. They fought a second time, came back, and that was kind of it. But that's the only experience I've had that is similar to this one. Just waiting for a player to fight every night and knowing it was going to be the main event. You're right. It doesn't happen anymore. I just hope that, like as everyone, that he doesn't take on too much. That I think everyone, everyone doesn't want, no one wants him just to be a novelty item. No one, but he can play. And actually,
Yes.
last night,
yeah, that was his first real ice time.
But he was, he
Career
was
high,
judicious
7
the way he
minutes.
played. He didn't get it. He didn't pick up a stupid penalty when he could have. He didn't fight, and he actually was on for a defensive zone draw fairly late in the third period in a 1-goal game. So Laviolette has some trust in him too. And when he's on with Edstrom, the puck invariably is at the other end of the ice. It is.
Yep.
Whether they can keep it there for more than 20 seconds, that's something else. Whether they can get it to the net on that shift, but they're always in the other end of the ice.
And they've been getting to the net. There's
Right.
been a couple of occasions where they're getting it to the net.
And last night again, obviously they didn't play a lot, but they weren't the line that was being trapped in their in the third period when the Rangers couldn't get out. So they bring a different element. But again, are they going to be on the roster on March the 9th? Are the Rangers going to fortify themselves with veteran grinding players who have obviously more experience than Edstrom and Rempe? And will Peter Laviolette be comfortable playing these kids? Is that what March is going to be about, or is March going to be about solidifying their post deadline roster? I don't know. So
what do you prepare for? You prepare for any scenario, right? So I do think that, and if it means that those guys go back, what if they go back for 10 games to Hartford and play more minutes?
And then
that's not going to be a bad thing.
Exactly.
And bring them back up. Even if they don't start game one, if a series is getting away, you don't like something
that's what I said. I said I could see Rempe, especially. I mean, Edstrom, who knows? Depending on how many guys they bring in, I think Edstrom has more of a chance of staying in the lineup. But I could see Rempe, and I said this, I'm pretty sure last week, just being a guy that they could throw in there for a spark. Or, if somebody goes after Panarin, somebody goes after Fox, he's a guy that goes in to answer the bell. I think that could be and I know Peter Laviolette wouldn't be afraid to use him in that way as well. But I think that could be a really cool, thing that they have in their back pocket that they haven't necessarily had. I mean, with Ryan Reeves was a little bit different, but and he also wasn't on the playoff roster last season. But
well, 2 years ago, and Brian obviously was on the other side, but early in the playoffs, Ryan Reeves was a factor.
100%.
I thought he was a factor against Pittsburgh, and I thought he was a factor against Carolina for the first 4, 5, 6 games of that series. I think his effectiveness, diminished as you got further on. So he couldn't skate with Tampa in the conference finals, but I thought early in that series, he threw some huge hits in game one. Huge hits on
10 minutes,
fifth, right?
Go back to the first 10 minutes of game one.
Right, game one.
I was looking around. I go, this team's going 16-0, and I was playing against them. I'm like, what just happened? And then, the air came out, and then I'm like, we should win in 5. We didn't, but
spoiler.
He was on the ice. It was a problem. And you know what else he did for that third line, that kid line with Hidel, Kakko, and Lafreniere? They were playing 6 inches bigger.
Yeah.
And real quick, I want to go back to Rempe before I forget. Like, for him now, I don't know if they're telling him this, and whatever, if my opinion matters or not. He's established an understanding across the league that he is willing and able.
Yeah.
for his own good. He's done enough right now in such a short time, which is so impressive. He can pick his own spots.
Right.
He's earned that right already, which is amazing to me. I hope he does it wisely, and he has counsel telling him, okay, you've done unbelievable. What a spark. This is how we're going to do it from here on out. And just to maximize what he could do, because you want him available.
I imagine so, especially because I mean, so many people were anticipating a rematch with Olivia, and I said to my editors, because we were kind of anticipating it, I was like, if I were a betting woman, I don't think he's going to fight tonight. I think that definitely it came down the chain of command. You got to take it easy tonight. It's getting to be a bit too much, but maybe this will be the last point about Rempe. I don't know, but I'm curious to see, because Larry reminded me last night that Reeves has specifically said that he no longer challenges. He will only fight people who are willing. So, and is Matt Rempe crazy enough to challenge Ryan Reeves? Like, I would hope not, honestly.
This is a different story. This is a different animal. I'd be shocked if he doesn't ask him.
Really?
I'd be shocked if Reeves doesn't ask him.
Oh, you'd be shocked if Reeves doesn't ask him. Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, knowing Reeves, knowing the personality that he has, and just kind of the way that he is, getting to know him while he was in New York, I would imagine so too. Just because I feel like that's just so him. But I remember reading what Larry had mentioned, or that he had come out and said, I just can't find guys that are willing anymore. So I'm not gonna, I'm not initiating anymore. And especially with he's probably one of the deadliest guys, in the league in that regard.
You know what, I'm 100% with Brian on this point, and you're right too. I mean, that's what he has said. He's going to make an exception on Saturday.
Oh yeah.
There is no way he can allow.
Guys, this is going to be
There is no
insane.
way Ryan Reeves can allow Matt Rempe to come into his house.
Yeah.
And not
the theater of it all.
Well, look how it's gone for Reeves this year too. Like, it hasn't been great.
Yeah. No.
What an opportunity.
And look,
oh my God, guys.
It's been 6 games already, and now Matt Rempe has dominated the podcast for the past 2 weeks. It's incredible. And Larry, I'm going to quote your article from this morning. February did not make the Rangers shiver, with every save Igor delivered. There was good news on the doorstep. And if I could just take that one further, as I watched on the stage, Rempe's hands were clenched with rage. And with that said, we will see what Matt Rempe does this weekend. We're going to take a short break here. We're going to come back.
Don McLean.
We're going to come back here. We're going to talk about Capo Caco moving lines. We're going to talk about some trade deadline stuff. Stay right here on the podcast. We'll be right back. Back here on the podcast, and we're going to set aside the Rempe talk for now. I know people can't get enough of it, but there is some other stuff to discuss in Ranger Land. Most notably, for yesterday's game, we saw a little bit of a line change with Mr. Capo Caco joining Mika and Kreider on their line, while Jimmy Vesey hopped down with Johnny Bro and Will Cooley. Anything to make of this change here? I know there's some speculation, maybe it's a way of showcasing Kako a little bit more for potential trade, which I'm very much against. But is that just Ranger fans over analyzing different moves, or is there something else going on here that we may not be aware to?
Well, I overanalyzed it. No, honestly, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
They had a third line, and it kind of slipped over the last couple of games. I get that, but they had a third line with some definition, and they had Kako playing as well as he had in a while. Opposite Cooley, they were big bodies. They went to the net. They played a very simple game, and Brodzinski in the middle, adding his speed. It gave them some depth in their lineup. Or at least I thought. And the first line, Jimmy Vesey is not a first line right wing, but you can plug him in. And the way Laviolette managed his ice time anyway, by the third period, Vesey was back down in the checking role, and he was just double shifting Panarin or Lafreniere or even Trocheck. He would move him up. So and the way Peter is leans on his top players. it gave him an extra opportunity to get Panarin more ice time, to get Lafreniere more ice time. To me, but moving Kakko up kind of leaves their third line completely undefined. I mean, it didn't work at all last night. Brzezinski with VC and Cooley. Yeah, I just don't think that's really a third line that's going to stick. And I didn't really think Kakko was too impressive last night in that game. And okay, but then there are more eyes on him. And what happens if that line doesn't work with him? They're going to bounce him back to the third line,
Yeah.
or they're going to trade. They're going to trade for a right wing to play with Zibanejad and Kreider, and they're going to bounce Kakko back. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I think there's a little more to it. Pat Verbeek was scouted the game last night, and we know the Rangers have been interested in, have a certain amount of interest in Vetrano and Henrique. Is it possible that the Rangers would flip Kakko for both of them? Again, I'm not, I haven't really done the math on the cap. Obviously there would be retention, maybe there'd be a third team, I don't know. But is that the all-in move that the Rangers think think that would benefit them off of this run? And we talked, I think Mollie's right. It was a very impressive month, a very impressive turnaround, but it raises the stakes. It raises the stakes for the team, and it surely raises the stakes for Chris Drury going into this deadline, because the Rangers are one of the co-favorites. They just are. They are what their record is. They're one of the best teams in the league, and they're one of the 3, 5, 7 teams that probably have the best shot at winning. So there's a lot on Drury to improve this team. Can he, and does he look at it and say, I'm getting 2 veterans, I'm filling 2 holes, I've got the right wing with Kreider and Zibanejad, I've got my center for the third line who can even move up if there's an issue. Is that what they're thinking about? Again, it would be an all-in move. It would be kind of a traditional Rangers move going for it. But otherwise, I just don't understand the switching lines last night. I really don't.
Yeah.
I have a theory.
Mm.
A couple weeks ago, he said, I really got to get Kakko more ice time. He's playing so well. You're throwing him a bone. If it works, not very often does it just work right away. So you go back, you reset, you get back with your guys, you grind. He's played great on that third line. Third line's been good. He's effective in that regard. He's not filling the net. So because he's not filling the net, people think, well, we can trade him for this guy, which, okay, he has value. He is a young player. He's played the way he's played, doesn't put a ton of goals in the net, but there's a lot of upside, and he's a good player on that third line right now. When you move him, the first line still doesn't work. Now your third line's weaker. All right, let's bring him back down. It's just sort of, maybe it works this time and they catch something, lightning in a bottle, whatever you want to call it. He said he wanted to get him more ice. He's trying to get him more ice. Do you think, I mean, on paper, I'm looking at Cooley, Brodzinski, and VC, and like, yeah, that could work because they've individually played really well for long stretches this year. You could put them together and figure it out. And I think you want to be able to maybe have that option if something happens at the deadline and you can't make something happen that you wanted to, and you don't get that guy that you wanted. You need to sort of figure out what you need. And if you don't get it, right, it's like we talked about in the playoff series, if it gets away from you. Well, now if the trade deadline gets away from you, someone's ask is too high, can't fit it with the cap or whatever it is, the deal falls through. What are your options? How do you move pieces around? And you're just gathering information, and you're giving a guy an opportunity. Like, your line's doing great. There were times when I got older where I'm like, I don't want to move off this line. We have a great role. We have a great thing. We had an injury. It's nice to be moved up, but I didn't want to move when I'm a young player, though.
Oh, Capo
I'm on the first
definitely wants to be moved up.
Let's go.
Yeah. Capo will tell anybody who will listen that he wants more ice time. That he wants to move up.
Right. He wants more minutes. He talks about that all the time. He wants more minutes.
Okay, but if that third line is going in the playoffs, guess what? they're going to get more minutes.
Yeah.
That's
You play
exactly
the guys that
That's
are
the
playing.
point. That's
yeah,
the
that's the
point.
point. That's why
Yeah.
I would have left them. I
Yeah.
honestly, I would have left. I would not have made this move.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
do agree with all points. I do think that Laviolette is very much so a reward, your players kind of guy. Just the way that he's operated this season. So I do think that part of it was, because Kako was doing well in that third line role, he wanted to, give him a reward. But at the same time, somebody, Dan Rosen actually explicitly asked Laviolette just straight up, is this an opportunity for Capo to secure that right wing spot? And then maybe Chris Drury can go and do something else, which, he kind of danced around the question a little bit, understandably, saying it was probably better for Drury. But that is, big picture, a possibility in this situation. But I mean, I guess they can afford, because of how well they're doing, they can afford to, switch things up like this and just see what happens. But I do think that third line was one of the better, probably the best combination that they've had this season, and they were probably getting the most that they had all season out of Capo in that position. And for those reasons, I feel like it might not have been the move to make. But I feel like Larry's right. That must mean something else is afoot here.
That's what I
And maybe
think.
he was being showcased a little bit.
That's kind of what I think. And listen, I understand that, at this time of year, general managers scout teams.
Mm-hmm.
They do. And I'm sure that Pat Verbeek didn't come to New York, didn't come east only to scout the Ranger game last night. I don't have his itinerary, but I assume he's
Just a
gonna,
guess.
yeah, I assume he's gonna hit, more spots.
He's been east.
but-
He's been east a couple times. He was at a college game. I saw him there. I mean, he's
Yeah.
a hardworking guy, obviously.
But my question, my point, I guess, is that he came to the Garden to watch the Rangers. Who is he scouting on the Rangers?
Mhm.
We can eliminate, 3/4 of their team who are available for trade. There are very few guys on this team who can be traded at the deadline. So who is he watching? I don't think he came seriously to watch Brodzinski. I don't think he came to watch Edstrom. I don't think he came to watch Jimmy Vesey. So who is he watching? Why did a general
Well,
manager
he
make
might
the
have
trip
been.
to the Garden?
He might have been with the younger players. If you're going to do a deal, and you're going to give up veteran players to help a team, you usually get picks and prospects back. Edstrom, Rempe, these guys, he could be watching them. Who knows?
I was
Could
gonna
be
say
watching
maybe
Edstrom.
maybe
He
this
could have
is
been
a
watching Edstrom.
ploy.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this has been. I don't know if this is giving them too much credit, but maybe this has been a ploy to generate attention for these guys and make them look a little bit of a little bit more
Hey.
value.
It's less likely, Larry. I agree with you. It's less likely, but it's not
No,
unheard of, right?
definitely
Like
less
you've
It's not
seen,
likely.
impossible. Right.
I don't think it. Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't. That wouldn't be my first thought, but. I
we'll
mean, because
see.
Listen,
we've talked about
let me
that they're
tell you,
not gonna I mean, at least especially Rempe, it's probably not gonna be in this playoff lineup. So that's why it's kind of like maybe.
Stranger things have happened.
let me tell you, unless Drury gets Troy Terry or somebody back from Anaheim, he cannot trade Matt Rempe. So
Yeah.
can you imagine the uproar of Matt Rempe
Going
being
to witness
traded at the
protection,
deadline?
Drew.
I know.
Don't do it.
It's too much love for the kid right now.
Well, I want to see what their lineup looks like when they play Florida.
Yeah.
If he's up there, then we'll have a different conversation. They played Columbus. I get Columbus beat them.
Well, you don't
want to win the game, but you can tinker a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. What are you asking?
I'm saying you can tinker a little bit with the lineup and see, again, gather information when you're playing Columbus.
Right.
No offense, no disrespect to Columbus, but they stink this year.
Right.
The game, they're obviously going to be motivated. They lost to them, excuse me, to break their streak. But you still can tinker a little bit. And I'll be interested to see Toronto, Florida.
Yeah.
This is a potential matchup. This is measuring stick type, whatever you want to call it. It's more interesting to me.
That's fair. And,
That is fair.
I think you'll have a good idea against the Panthers, and we'll know by then. One last thing before we head over to Brian's Boiling Point. I look in a season like this where there's usually a lot of bad stuff. I mean, not saying usually bad stuff, but when there's bad stuff going on, there's a lot of headlines, and Matt Rempe's obviously stolen the story for the past few weeks. But there's a guy that I don't want to say he's flying under the radar, but Artemi Panarin, it arguably his best season of his career. Recorded his fourth 3-point game in the last 7 games.
Like, what?
I mean, I know we talked about Mika being inconsistent and needing to see more from him, but this team is essentially riding on Artie's back. And I'm not saying that he's not getting enough love. I think he gets plenty of love, but does he not deserve just all the praise and all the accolades and awards that this dude should be getting? Because it's been a phenomenal season, and without Artie, I don't know where this Ranger team is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a theme for a little while, but this season in particular, I think he got a little bit more love and attention earlier in the season, and then as the Rangers kind of not faltered because they never lost the first place in the Metropolitan Division, but as they were working out their kinks and going through a bit of a rough stretch, I think that he kind of fell off in the conversation a little bit, but he has just been electric for them this season, and no one should lose sight of the fact that he's set a new career high in goals with Alexis Lafreniere on the other side of him. And I think, Artemi can elevate the play of anybody who he's playing with, and there's no doubt that has transferred over to Lafreniere. But you know what? I think Lafreniere has also complimented Artemi Panarin as well. I think that they have, this is the best that Alexis Lafreniere has looked, understandably, but I think that he really has contributed his own, and it's not like Artemi has done all of the work. I definitely think Alexi has contributed as well, and he deserves the credit for that as well. And I think it's been awesome for Alexis Lafreniere to have this sort of season, and he's probably gained a lot of confidence playing on the opposite wing of Artemi Panarin.
Wow.
They read off each other. They're both extremely creative. They seem to see the game the same way. They've been driving play all year. Maybe there's Kucherov. Maybe there's
there it is. There's Kucherov.
There's Kucherov. There's Pasternak, and there's Panarin. I think they're the three best wings in the National Hockey League.
There you go. But who else, excuse me, who else is underrated? It's Kuch, right? He's got 40 more points than the next guy on his team. Never really gets talked about that much. And Panarin I love the player. He is unbelievable. He's still not Kucherov, and Kuch doesn't get enough love. So I don't know if it's a Russian thing. We don't give enough love to these Ruskies, but when you can make other players better, and all the talk prior to the season about what Laf's going to do and where is he, it's kind of like time to get going with him. They've built something. It's getting better, right? It is getting more dynamic. It's a duo that really seems to, and throw Troch in there too, because I always love to give Troch love. It's just a right compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he's got like 26 more points than the next guy on this team with a lot of stars on it, which is really, really impressive. And Panarin, and who's next? I was just looking at it and I forget, but I think it's Kreider or something. But they have a number of stars. This guy drives the bus every single game. And they're going to need that. Absolutely. They're going to need more from others as it gets going. But they have it and they've shown it. So it is exciting. But he is he's the bus driver.
And you know what? Since you brought him up earlier and we talked about Rick Nash, there's going to be the same spotlight on Panarin.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
As there always was.
Third year in a row with it too.
His first year, Nash's first year was the lockout shortened year.
Yeah.
The year wound up losing to Boston in the second round, beat Washington coming back from 3-2 down. And I think he scored one goal so immediately the next year it became, but what's he going to do in the playoffs? What's he going to do in the playoffs? and the spotlight was on him, and that's the year, he scored 3 goals on 82 shots, and it stayed with him for his entire stay with the Rangers. Yeah, Nash is great in the regular season, but he can't score in the playoffs. He can't score in the playoffs. He had some great games against Tampa in the 2015 series, right? I mean, and in Tampa.
Yeah.
He was
But
awful to play
it always
against.
came back to what Rick Nash was a disappointment in the playoffs. That's the way his Ranger career is remembered. And Panarin needs to produce this time around.
He's faced with the same narrative.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these are narratives that develop generally because there's a germ of truth to them. So there's gonna be the spotlight is gonna be on Panarin when the playoffs begin. It's going to be on Zibanejad when the playoffs begin. There's no two ways about it. You have to have your best players being your best players.
Artemi Panarin, always good, always fresh. Gotta love the bread. Last thing here before we head over to Brian's Boiling Point, and I just want to do this right now because I have all three of you here with me. For some of you who don't know, this is actually my last show with the Up in the Blue Seats podcast crew, and I'm going to miss hanging with the three of you and all of our listeners, our great listeners. And I just wanted to personally thank Larry, Mollie, and Brian for all their help and work that they've put into the show. The show's not going anywhere. Brian, Mollie, Larry, they'll be back next week. They're going to take you through the playoff run and everything like that. And I will be listening and reading and watching. And I encourage all of our great viewers and listeners to do the exact same. And I know that you guys will. But I just wanted to take this time to thank you guys so much for making this a great, awesome season so far. And I look forward to keep listening. And yeah, that's pretty much all. We'll keep it short, keep it sweet. We still have to close out the show, so we'll do that.
We love you, Andrew.
I appreciate it. Thank you. But the show is going to continue to kick ass like the Rangers have been doing. And so, yeah, just wanted to make that point. Larry, as always, we appreciate you coming on this week. Thank you so much. I will listen to you next week. And it's now time for your boiling point of the week. And now it's time for the boiling point. Brian, what's boiling your point this week?
What's boiling my point? Interesting. Anyways, we listen, it's tryout season, it's playoff season for youth hockey. We're going back to the well with youth hockey. There's going to be a lot of kids at the rink. I think emotions are running pretty high with parents and kids. It's a stressful time. Now, let's control what we can control. A lot of kids coming in and out. The rinks are busy, using the locker room. Kids, remember 2 things, please, because it drives me nuts. If you bring a water bottle to the locker room or on the bench, bring it back into the locker room and take it home with you. Your parents don't want to shell out every other week for a new BioSteel or Gatorade or whatever water bottle for little Johnny to have 3 sips of because he's thirsty when coach makes practice a little bit harder. Having said that, number 2, throw your tape in the trash. When you're done with your hockey tape on your stick or on your shin pads, throw it in the trash. And coaches, your job is to look around or assign someone to look around and leave the locker room the way you found it when you came in, or better, because some other teams leave tape in certain places. These rinks are hard to staff. They usually don't make any money. It's expensive to keep a rink up. Let's keep the rinks up. Let's try to keep them nice, keep them looking good so more kids have more places to skate. Thank you.
And that'll put a bow on episode 146 of the Up in the Blue Seats podcast, our Rangers podcast from the New York Post. But as always, before we get out of here, we got to dish out some stars. Mollie, let's go with you first this week. Who's your number 1 star?
I'm going to go with the gentleman, Vincent Trocheck. Landed a massive hit on Johnny Gaudreau, open ice hit, just laid him out. Was checking in him on the ice and then waited for him outside of the visiting locker room at the Garden. I saw the whole exchange with my own eyes. Very nice of him. They broed it out and all is good, all is well. But yeah, always tip your cap to good sportsmanship from Vincent Trocheck.
That's so lovely.
All around good guy, Johnny
Brian's
Trocheck.
like,
It's hockey.
Hits happen. Injuries happen. Just not during the playoffs, right, Brian?
Yeah, you don't apologize in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have been standing there.
See, that's how you got to approach it. Yes, exactly.
Well, what are you gonna do?
Brian,
my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn. Number 2 star.
Can I go 2 guys?
Go for it.
I'm gonna go Breadman and Igor. A couple of Ruskies. Yeah, Igor's back, and Artemi is just.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no, Brian.
Oh no.
This is
This is unfortunate. Nope, we don't.
Can't hear you. Nope. All right. Well, that's it.
3,
Brian's
2.
Oh, there he is, and he's back.
he's holding it.
The
If you're
cord
not
comes
watching
out
on YouTube,
sometime.
he's holding it in.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. All right, my 2 stars of number 2 stars. Shit, I'm off the rails.
This is
I
it.
got Igor. I got Igor. Okay, Jake, we're good. I got Igor and Artemi Panarin.
Double whammy.
Can anyone hear me?
We
can
got
hear
you, Brian.
All right. Igor's back, and the bread man is driving the bus. I said it 100 times. I don't know how many times you guys heard me say it.
Saying it again.
I'm saying it again.
Take a shot.
Yeah, this guy's fun to watch. Career high in goals. Congrats to the bread man.
Mhm.
Yeah. Love to the 2 Ruskies, which the Rangers aren't going nowhere
Can we
without.
say Ruskies? If that offends anyone, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I won't say it anymore. after now.
Apologies. It's my last episode, so I'm not gonna take any backlash. So it's on you guys.
I actually don't really care either.
My 3rd star. Since Molly took 1 guy, you took 2 guys. I'm gonna take 3 people. I'm gonna take my 3 stars for the 3rd star. It's gonna be Molly, Larry, and Brian. The 3 of you guys are gonna get my
Aw.
last star of the
That's cute of you.
of my show. You guys, all 3 of you guys are stars. You're all stars and in the paper, on the ice, and just people in general. So one last thank you guys, and we'll be in touch. This isn't any hags here. No have a great summer, which Molly taught me last year on the podcast. So
Did I really teach you that?
you did. I never heard that in school. Hags, never.
Did you ever hear that, Brian, or is that a my
First
generation
time I'm hearing
thing?
it right now.
So there we go.
Yeah,
So
so it was definitely a my generation thing. Well, you learn something new every day,
Have a good
guys.
Summer.
yeah, exactly.
Hags.
Andrew,
No,
quick
that's-
question.
That's what we used to write on yearbooks and stuff, just hags.
We didn't write on yearbooks. I went to an all boys Catholic high school.
No,
Okay, well,
there
there
you
you go.
I don't
Different
have my
situation,
yearbook. So you mentioned me 3rd. Do I get number 1 then, or am I the 3rd star? Because this is important.
Ooh,
You
on
know,
the
I mean,
spot.
Brian, I'm gonna give you number 3 because you're still the newest one to the podcast. So unfortunately,
Ooh,
you're gonna
Rubbish.
seniority.
you're gonna get the rookie lap on the podcast here. So
You rookie schmelt. Take a lap.
rookie. But thank you guys as always, and thank you to the listeners. A big thank you to Jake Brown as always for producing the show. He's gonna stay on here. He'll drive you guys through the playoffs. I can't wait to hear what goes on, and hopefully we'll culminate the season, with the trip down to Canyon of Heroes. Fingers crossed. But still plenty of time to talk and listen and watch about that. So as always, you can catch up on all the episodes by subscribing up in the blue seats, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching this right now, New York Post Sports YouTube page, give us a thumbs up. Comment below. How are you feeling about the Rangers going into March? Best team, right?
Woohoo.
I'm just saying. You can also follow us on Twitter. I'm just going to say Twitter. I'm not even going to mention X because of Molly, but it's at
Yeah.
Mollie Walker, 2 E's, 2 R's, at Brybrows22, and myself at Andrew Harts without the E. For Brian Boyle, Mollie Walker, Larry Brooks, and Andrew Harts, thank you for listening, watching, subscribing to the podcast. Thank you for all listeners' support. I won't be back next week as usual, but it will be Larry, Brian, and Molly. They're going to drive this thing, drive the bus, not the Gus bus, not the Panarin bus, but the Up in the Blue Seats podcast bus. They'll take you all the way through to the playoffs here. But until then, I'm out of here. Later.